Heart of a Champion, Chapter 9. Once Little League started, Jimmy and I couldn't meet at Henry Ford. His team played on Tuesday night and Saturday afternoon. Mine played on Wednesday and Sunday, so it didn't work out. We still saw each other, though, because we'd go to each other's games whenever we could. The major leagues played at Kiwanis Field. They had permanent bleachers, dugouts, outfield fences with the distances marked. Groundkeepers chalked the foul lines and the batter's box before every game. They'd drag the infield to pick up loose rocks, and on hot days, they watered to keep the dust down. The major leaguers had full uniforms, caps, jerseys, pants, socks. The minors were different. We played at Ben Franklin School. No bleachers, no dugouts, no benches. They put the lines down and dragged the infield at the start of the season, and that was it for the year. Even the outfield was second rate. Left and center had good, deep fences, but about 50 feet behind the infield in right was a sloping bank covered with bushes. A lazy ball could reach that bank. They couldn't give a home run for such a measly hit, so any ball that reached the ground was a ground rule double. On Tuesdays and Saturdays, I'd go to Kiwanis Field and watch Jimmy play. It should have been fun, but it wasn't. Mr. Winter would go berserk whenever any call went against Jimmy. "That was no strike! He was safe! Are you blind, ump, or are you just stupid?" There were other red-faced fathers at that game, but Mr. Winter screamed the loudest and longest. I wondered how Jimmy felt hearing his dad screaming. That season, I measured myself against Jimmy. If he got 2 hits on a Saturday, then I wanted 3 on Sunday. If he drove in a run on Tuesday, then I wanted 2 RBIs on Wednesday. When he had a big day, it would pump me up. But sometimes it worked the other way. If he'd gone 0 for 4, I'd get it in my head that I was going to have a bad game. In baseball, you think negative. Negative is what you get. Jimmy didn't have many bad games, so chasing him made me the star of Eng's Palace Mets. That and the short bank in right field. Because of Mr. Winter's coaching, I was good at going to the opposite field. Fly balls to right that should have been easy outs would plop down in the bushes on the bank, and I'd be standing at second. They were Mickey Mouse doubles, but nobody could have told me that. At the start of the season, my mother took a picture of me in uniform. Bat-cocked, tough guy look on my face. I glued that picture to a piece of cardboard. After every game, I'd go home and write down my stats in a notebook I kept in my drawer. At the end of the year, I planned to make a baseball card of myself. At-bats, hits, runs, RBIs, the whole thing. Then the last week of the season, magic struck. The phone rang. I'd been called up by the Woodside Plaza Merchants, Jimmy's team. Only 1 game remained in the season, but that didn't matter. I'd made the majors. Jimmy was almost as happy as I was. "I told you," he kept saying. "Didn't I say they'd call you up?" I was sky high the whole week. I didn't crash until I got to the park and discovered I wasn't in the starting lineup. I spent the game on the far corner of the bench waiting. When Woodside Plaza was up, Jimmy would talk to me, but I could barely answer. The lump in my throat was that big. I kept looking at the coach, wondering if I'd ever get in. In the bottom of the 5th, he pointed toward me. "Steve, grab a bat. You're pinch hitting for the pitcher." I looked around. "Me?" "Yeah, you. Get up there." I grabbed my bat and raced to the on-deck circle. "Good luck," Jimmy said as I went by. When I was on deck, I tried to time the pitcher. He seemed fast, so I decided I'd better choke up, even though Mr. Winter didn't like that. The batter hit a couple of foul balls to the right, then struck out. It was my turn. My first at-bat in the major leagues. My heart was thumping. I'd scratched a little hole for myself deep in the batter's box. Brought the bat back, elbows pointed down, and faced the mound. I'll never forget that pitch. 1 second the ball was in his hand. The next instant it was in the catcher's mitt. "Strike 1," the umpire called. I swallowed, stepped out. I went over what Mr. Winter had said. Pick up the ball right as it leaves the pitcher's hand. Again, the pitcher wound up and delivered. "Strike 2," the umpire called. I pounded the bat on the plate. I'm not going to strike out. I told myself, no matter what, I'm going to take a hack at it. But the final strike was like the first 2. The ball was by me before I could pull the trigger. "That's okay," Jimmy said when I returned to the bench. "Steve Cannon is the fastest pitcher in the league. He strikes out almost everybody." The next hitter bounced back to the box. Jimmy jumped up, grabbed his glove, and took his position as shortstop. I looked to the coach, but he didn't motion me to take the field. My Little League career was over. That night, I took out the notebook I'd used to keep my stats from my games with Eng's Palace Mets. I looked at my high batting average, the RBIs, the doubles. I couldn't believe how dumb I'd been, planning to make a baseball card of myself, thinking that because I could hit in the minors, I was a good ball player. What a joke. I ripped that notebook to shreds. I was feeling real sorry for myself, like what had happened to me when the worst thing that had ever happened to anybody. Then the very next Saturday, Jimmy showed up at Henry Ford without his father. We played catch and 3 flies up and hit grounders to each other, but it wasn't until we were finished and were sitting on the grass that he told me what was up. My father moved out last night, he said. My parents are going to get a divorce. My mouth dropped open. Why? I managed. He grimaced. It's kind of complicated. My mother wants him to do stuff he doesn't want to do. I wanted to ask what, but I didn't have the guts. Once I got home, I told my mother. She surprised me. Divorce isn't the end of the world, Seth. Jimmy will still see his father. Mom, I said, you don't understand. It won't be all the same. Jimmy won't have his father around to play ball and stuff. It's the worst thing that could have happened. She looked at me like I was missing something that was right in front of my face. For a few seconds, I couldn't figure out what that was. Then I understood. I walked down the hall and into my room. I felt ashamed of forgetting about my own father.